Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 976B, and today's date is May 20th, 2016, and the title of the episode is U.S. is losing control of the Middle East and is preparing to take action. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Remember back in the days when Obama was out there telling us that he's going to help us with health care? He's going to give everyone health insurance. It's going to be affordable. It's going to be a benefit to the people. Well, we discussed it many times over and over and over. And we realize it is not a benefit to the people. And it's not cheap. It's not affordable. So there was a survey that was done. And it looked at different countries. And they listed them from the most expensive health insurance to the least expensive health insurance. And here is the top 10. The number one country for the most expensive health insurance, yes, you guessed it, the United States. And surprisingly, the obesity rate is 35% here in the United States. Number two is Switzerland, and their obesity rate is 10%. Norway, their obesity rate is 10%, then Netherlands, Sweden, Germany, Denmark, Austria. And we can see that the Affordable Care Act is not affordable whatsoever. Now, out in D.C., they have a law, a gun law, where the district police, they require applicants to have a good reason for seeking a permit to carry a gun on the street. And it gave police discretion, who can carry a weapon, who can't carry a weapon, if they fear injury or other specific reason, or maybe they have a job that carried a large amount of cash or valuables and they need to have a weapon, the police would say, okay, here's a weapon for you. You can carry it. Someone who says, I just want a weapon and I want to carry it around just for personal protection to defend myself, they had the discretion to say, no, I don't think so. Now, a judge looked at this, and the judge said, well, wait a minute. All citizens have a constitutional right to keep firearms in their homes for self-defense, and this was ruled in the Supreme Court back in 2008 in District of Columbia versus Heller. But he took it a step further and said, well, it doesn't matter if it's in your home or if you're carrying it. Actually, you would probably want it while you're walking around because there's more of a chance that something could happen to you. And the judge ruled on a lawsuit which was filed last year by Matthew Grace, the owner of 4 legally registered handguns and pink pistols, a shooting group he belongs to. In his court papers, Grace said that he had no special reason for needing to carry a gun on the street beyond the usual worries about street violence, but that gun law violated the Second Amendment right to bear arms for the self-defense. And Leon agreed that the Second Amendment covered the right to carry a pistol in the street as well as the home. The need for self-defense, he said, is of course greater outside of the home than it is within the home. And we can see right now what they were trying to do is they were trying to limit the number of people who actually had a weapon. And this has been the main agenda of government since the very beginning. Now, a couple of reports ago, we talked about Victoria Nuland, how she flew to Russia to talk about the Minsk II ceasefire agreement and how she opposed to the elections. And if there were elections, they'd have to meet the criteria of Kiev, and they have to be in full compliance with the OSCE. And we know every time Victoria Nuland goes to a certain place or talks about certain things, things start to happen. Now, out in Ukraine, what we're seeing right now is there are thousands of nationalists, and they are protesting in front of the Ukrainian parliament in Kiev. Strangely enough, what are they demonstrating about? Well, they're demonstrating about the elections in Donbass. They're saying if Poroshenko allows this, they want him removed. Now, all of a sudden, as soon as Victoria Nuland talked about this, It was reported on. We have this protest. It seems like a coincidence to me, and I don't believe in coincidences. This was planned. They're trying to show that people don't want elections. They're trying to show, look, you see, the majority of the people in Ukraine don't want this to happen. It's not us, it's them. But they're trying to convince everyone with 1,000 people. Now, they blocked traffic in the center of Ukraine capital. Andrei Belinsky, the founder of the nationalist Azov Battalion, called for Kiev to withdraw from the Minsk agreements regarding eastern Ukraine. Let's get rid of the Minsk agreements altogether. So do we see something building at this point in Ukraine once again? Well, we know they're not going to abide by the Minsk II ceasefire agreement. They made it perfectly clear. We see these protests now occurring. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is actually the beginning of the offensive that they're going to push, because we know for a fact the U.S. is never going to go along with completing the Minsk II ceasefire agreement. The central bankers didn't get what they wanted. They wanted the entire country. They wanted the production of coal. They wanted the gas pipelines. They wanted Crimea. They wanted the ports on the Black Sea. They got none of it. They wanted the strategic location, but up right against Russia. And they're going to go for it. Now, we see the U.S. House of Representatives, they passed a $610 billion defense policy, which will provide $150 million security assistance for Ukraine. Now, it's funny how they can give $150 million to Ukraine, but here, we have infrastructure being destroyed. Puerto Rico is a complete mess. People are struggling to make ends meet, but we have no problem spending hundreds of millions on all these different foreign governments that the U.S. went in and did a regime change. It's amazing to me. Now, NATO is looking to put a lot more troops into Eastern Europe. Troops could be deployed on rotation in Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, Poland, Romania, and Bulgaria. John Kerry was out there, and he said that NATO was building a robust defensive eastern flank. And right now, NATO foreign ministers, they've been finalizing the alliance's biggest military buildup since the end of the Cold War. And this should tell us something, because we've been tracking this, we've been watching it, and we've been seeing all the military assets being moved to Eastern Europe, to the Middle East, to Africa, to the Pacific. We've been seeing troops being brought in, bending the rules, saying, no, these are not permanent, they're rotation, these are temporary. This is how they get around all the agreements. Actually, they're breaking the agreements when they do this. All of this is being done for World War III. And since the beginning, when we've been tracking all this, it seemed like, oh, okay, we had one or two things. But since that time, we've been seeing it steadily increase over time. Actually, the provocations have steadily increased over time. We see a pattern, and the pattern is for war. We see Turkey right now. Right now, Turkey voted on a new law, and Erdogan wants opposition parliament members stripped of their immunity, leaving them vulnerable to prosecution and imprisonment for criticizing his policies. Sounds like a dictator to me. He has two goals in mind. Of course, being a dictator, and eliminating pro-Kurdish peoples, the Democratic Party of Turkey. Now, we know the Turkish Prime Minister resigned, but what's very interesting right now is that they are naming a new Prime Minister, Binali Yildirim. And he is a transport minister, and he will work in total harmony with Erdogan. Actually, they're buddies. And the new Prime Minister's main task will be to pilot a change in the constitution to transform Turkey from a parliamentary to a presidential system placing more power in Erdogan's hands. So we see what's happening in this country. He wants full power to do whatever he wants. And we can see right now, once he has full power, he will be a full, complete dictator. Now it looks like NATO is getting more involved in what's going on in the Middle East. Right now, NATO foreign ministers, they gave the nod at their May 19th, 20th meeting in Brussels for the alliance to set up a bilateral teams of experts with Iraq and Libya to explore how NATO can help with their training and other defenses. And it looks like they'll be bringing in trainers, advisors into these areas. And we know for a fact that these are not going to be trainers and advisors. Also, they agreed to expand NATO's maritime role in the central Mediterranean to include counterterrorism, sea lane protection, and other tasks that these countries absolutely need. No, what they're really doing is they're setting up for a major offensive in this entire area. This is what they've been preparing for. This is why the ships are there. This is why the U.S. is getting ready to send ships into the Aegean Sea. This is why Germany and other nations have ships in this area, because they're getting ready to use all of this in Libya, in Iraq, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Yemen. And we see it all happening right now. They are losing complete control of the situation in the Middle East. And you have to remember, the economic collapse and what is happening out around the world, it's all tied in. Remember, the entire system is built on the petrodollar system. And the petrodollar system out in the Middle East is used to sell the oil, and countries hold on to the dollar and use the dollar to purchase the oil. If these countries decide, okay, we got rid of the puppet government, we are no longer using the petrodollar, and they decide to use the yuan, the ruble, the euro, gold, silver, whatever, the dollar system deteriorates rapidly and implodes. This is why the U.S. government central bankers are out there killing as many people as they possibly can, pushing war wherever they possibly can, and getting rid of elected leaders wherever they possibly can. Because it doesn't matter how many people they hurt or kill, or how many countries they invade, as long as their system, where they make a huge amount of wealth, is intact. And we can see things are rapidly falling apart. In Iraq, we see anti-government protesters. They're back at it. They're in Baghdad's green zone, and they've reached the Council of Ministers building. And we can see that the people are very unhappy with the puppet government there, and they are holding protests. And we can see why the U.S. government central bankers have bringing in more and more troops. And this is not just happening in Iraq. We see this buildup of people, and of course, these people are called terrorists. Or if they're not called terrorists yet, they will be called terrorists. They will be called Al-Qaeda, because we know the 2001 authorization for war has been extended now. It was not repealed. And they're going to use this to go back into each and every one of these countries, most likely at the same time at this point, to try to gain control of what is going on. Now, out in Syria, we see that the Syrian army, they have liberated about 13 settlements near Damascus. And Russia did something very interesting. Russia has proposed to the United States and the U.S.-led coalition that they begin on a May 25th joint airstrikes in Syria, targeting the Nusra Front and other terrorists that are not observing the ceasefire. And Russia proposes that these strikes should also target convoys with weapons, including those crossing into Syria from Turkey, those crossing from Jordan into Syria, those crossing everywhere else. Now, if the U.S. says, okay, we're going to join you, we're going to fight the terrorists, that would prove to us that the U.S. is going to work with Russia. They can't hide what they're doing because they have to coordinate everything and where they're actually attacking. And that would show the world that, yes, the United States is truly, at this point, ready to go after terrorism with Russia, united as one. But that's not what the United States is doing. The U.S. rejected their proposal. They said, we're not going to coordinate with Russia in this regard. There's no reason. We have our own agenda. And their agenda is to destroy the infrastructure, to support their terrorist groups, to try to get Assad out of power. So we can see once again, this is not the first time Russia has done this. They've done this many, many times. Actually, they were saying, listen, work with us and the Syrian government to get rid of the terrorist organizations. Why won't they do this? Because the terrorist organizations, they are the proxy army of the United States government central bankers. Now, the U.S.-led coalition, they're out there saying that they're going to be going into Raqqa. We know that Syria and Russia will also be going into Raqqa, but the U.S.-led coalition did something very interesting, which Russia and Syria are not doing. They're dropping leaflets telling people to flee this area. Really what they're doing is they're telling the terrorists, leave this area because Russia and Syria are coming. We've seen this before. When the U.S. was going to bomb the convoy, because Russia was actually bombing the oil convoy, the United States dropped leaflets ahead of time saying, get out of your trucks. We're going to bomb this convoy right here. But we don't want to hit our paid people. The same thing is happening. Now, we see that there were pieces of the aircraft from Egypt Air found near Alexandria in the Mediterranean, about 290 kilometers north of Alexandria. And what's very interesting about this whole thing, people are saying that the plane swerved, bobbed, then weaved, which passenger planes normally don't do. We've seen a missile in a video. I can't confirm it, but they're saying this is the missile that was headed maybe towards the plane, allegedly. We're not absolutely positive. We know there were 3 air marshals on the plane, maybe escorting some type of person or cargo or something else on the plane. And the plane went down. Someone saw a flash of light in the sky. And we know during this time we've had this drill going on. And we know there were a lot of different missile-guided destroyers out there. And the drill's going on at the same exact time. And you know when they have these drills, they have satellites right above. Right now it's very interesting that no satellites actually caught anything. Secondly, don't these planes have black box recorders that send out a signal? It doesn't seem like they're actually searching for this. Or there is no signal whatsoever. But normally this is something that comes up right away saying, we're looking for the black boxes. We're looking for the recorders. We have a signal. And these black boxes, they're created to withstand this type of crash. But at this point, the U.S. right now is pushing terrorism. Corporate media is pushing terrorism. And this is the route they always go in. They always go down the path of terrorism. And at this point, the indicators that we've been seeing does not point to this. It looks like it points to maybe the plane was shot down out of the sky during the drills. Now, of course, they can manipulate the information. They can just come out with propaganda saying, yes, it is terrorism, without any proof. They've done this many, many times before. But we'll have to watch this very carefully to see where they go with this. Now, we see Germany and France. They are warning that the Islamic State are planning attacks during the Euro 2016 football tournament. Right now, France is on high alert, and they have extended their state of emergency to cover the Euro 2016 games. And of course, it looks like they did this on purpose to extend the state of emergency. And we see a lot of countries, this is what they do. They put fear into the people to extend their agendas, their state of emergencies, their laws. And we see at this point that as this economy deteriorates implodes on itself, because we've seen this death cross. The U.S. government central bankers, from everything that we've been looking at, all the indicators, are showing that they're preparing and ready to take action in the Middle East. I mean, they're bringing ships into the area. We already know NATO, Germany, and other countries have ships in the area. We know troops are being brought into each one of these countries. Actually, they're building bases in Libya. They have them in Yemen. They're building bases in Syria. They've been building them in Iraq. More and more troops are funneling in. The president has a blank check, full authorization for war. Congress is not representing the people right now. They're letting the president handle all of this. And we're starting to see that Turkey has warned about terrorism. They said it was going to happen on the 19th. We're at the 20th right now. But we still can't rule this out, because we know they're preparing for this major offensive. They don't want to cooperate with Russia in going after the terrorists. So what are they really doing there? They've been getting ready to light up the Middle East. They're getting ready to try to take control back from the people. They're getting ready to go after Assad, to start war with Russia. This is what they've been preparing for. How it's going to play out exactly, we're going to have to wait and see. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.